If you came across this video, it's meant for you. I think it's meant to hear you're meant to hear my story so I can sparkle that inspiration that you're seeking to make that change. So I made this drastic change in my life, and I'm not recommending any means. I was just something that I had to do in my life. So January of 2020, I left my hometown of San Diego. I left and I haven't looked back. December 2019, I wiped out a two-bedroom apartment, threw everything away, packed clothes and blankets in my Toyota Corolla, what I could fit at that time. And the reason I left was because I was working really hard. I was going to school and I was trying to better my situation. I was trying to progress, and things weren't working out for myself and for my son. I was, in a bucket of in a barrel, crab barrel. I was trying to climb up to the light, but I kept getting pulled down, and even my son was having a very hard time at the high school that he was in. So I knew if I didn't make the drastic change to move, um, things were gonna end up bad. I was afraid that my son was gonna be on drugs and in gangs, and it was just really, it was just bad. And I think the anger that we were building up was we were gonna use it to self harm. And I tried to move out of my area, but San Diego was so expensive for the time, and for a single parent, you're kind of limited of where you can move. I could have moved to other areas, but they were worse than where we're at. So on January 1st, I started my journey. It took me 3 days to get to Colorado. I did take my time driving. I did not have a plan. I didn't have no job, and I didn't know anybody at all. It was just myself and my son. And it was just like, I got to ride it. I have to take a risk. Like, I just knew something was out there better for us. So on the 1st, I left January 2020. By the third, we got to Colorado on the 3rd, and by the 26th, I already had a job, an apartment, and my son was already in school. This is all true story. And I think the reason I'm telling you this is like, don't let a lot of fear paralyze you to not to take action, to make any changes that you need to make in your life to make your life better, to be happier. So whether it's like to lose weight, grow, have more mental stability, emotional intelligence. If you're in a relationship, if you're not happy, you can end it or go to couple counseling. It's like, seek whatever is necessary for you to change to be better. Because life is so much better than what we're settling for. And I'm just telling you because I took a big risk and it paid off. Like, my life, it just gets better and better. But like I said, I'm not advising to make any very drastic changes like I did. But you can make changes to whatever areas in your life that you're not happy with. You don't have to stay unhappy and suffering. Like, no, like, yeah, esos tiempos se acabaron. Like, those days are over. Like, own your life, own it, and seek and fight for what you want. You just have to fight for your happiness. It's just that. But my journey throughout Colorado, I utilized the fear to propel me to stay focused, to maintain a positive and optimistic view instead of just focusing on what I like, which was a home, a job, because I had no idea what was going to happen when we got to Colorado. But as I drove to Colorado, I did, stop to seek shelter. And during the night, I utilized the time to look for jobs, and I submitted my resume. Luckily, we got on the 3rd. By the 8th, I already had a couple job interviews. So by the 6th, one of the interviews that I went to, I didn't have any professional clothes. So I went to Goodwill to buy a shirt and pants. I literally changed in a mall shopping center. I changed in the back seat, and I went to the job interview. My son waited for me in the back seat with our belongings in the car, and I was kind of like afraid going to the job interview because I was like, oh my god, what is she gonna think? But then I kind of stopped for a minute and I was like, I don't wait, she doesn't know, like, I'm new here, I'm new in this city, nobody knows me, like, she doesn't know my situation, and I don't have to tell her anything. So, I walked in there charismatic, optimistic, positive. I ended up getting a job, which it was in downtown Denver at a gastroenterology office, which I'm so thankful. It was in downtown because I had time. It gave me time to gauge, the more in the nearest communities that I liked. I stayed in hotels for a week and a half until I found a job, and I was able to find a nearby community, and I got an Airbnb, and I went to work and I started looking for apartments nearby. So that's how I was able to get everything by January 26th, which it was a very short period of time in which I didn't sleep. It was this hustle, 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 but I didn't let the fear paralyze me. I kept taking action. I used that fear to take action. Like, okay, I'm fear that, I may end up at a homeless shelter. So I was like, okay, what can I do to keep that from happening? Things like that. So don't get me wrong. I grew up in shelters as a kid. So I'm not saying something's wrong. Sometimes we have to go that route in the meantime, but luckily I didn't. But I'm like, saying it in a bad thing, but I did. I As a kid with my mom, when we first got to San Diego, we stayed in San Diego shelter. So I'm not begging or saying anything negative about that. We have to do what we have to do, but I just wanted to prevent that as much as I could because I had already lived in it, and I don't want my son to experience that. But the reason I'm telling you this is, like, don't be afraid to make changes, because if you don't know what you're missing out until you make those changes. Like, you don't have to stay suffering in your negative situation and being a victim of it. Get your shit, make those changes. You'll be so much happier and content that you did, and you'll start trusting yourself because you'll get to know yourself, what you like, what you dislike, what works for you. You'll start growing in different aspects of your life that you didn't expect or didn't even know existed. So don't be afraid. And I think I'm kind of shaking because I'm not used to sharing. I'm very enclosed. Like, I'm very like, oh, I don't want to tell my story. But I think now at a point in my life, I have to share it. I have to tell you what's possible. And you have the sparkle. You have it inside of you. Just when the job interview, I can never forget about my first job interview because I went to Goodwill, got myself, a professional shirt and pants. I changed at a Macy's shopping center parking lot. I went to the job interview. I had my son in the back seat and my stuff in the trunk. I didn't have a home. I did get a P.O. box after that job interview. Because I needed, you need to have some kind of address. So once I found like in a community that I liked, I got a P.O. box in the meantime. In that experience alone just taught me so much, that whatever you want is there, and you have it inside of you. Whatever you need, it's inside of you to make those changes. Like, that sparkle is there. So that job interview, never gonna forget it. It's what keeps me going back. So when I get like fearful of trying something new, because it's like it's not gonna go away. That fear is never gonna go away. You just have to learn to live with it and adapt and utilize it for your own benefit. So now when I'm fearful for doing something, I will go back to that experience because I got the job. She didn't know anything about my situation, and I ended it because it's the way I presented myself. I didn't let the negative circumstances determine that future. So think about that, and that's why I'm sharing it. And I hope this story inspires you, and you're watching this for a reason. And yes, you can change it. You can change your life.